They begged me to come back, like nothing had happened, like years of being used could vanish with a single call. I almost answered. Almost. But then I remembered what silence feels like. Christmas that year was supposed to feel warm, cozy, and maybe even healing. Instead, it became the moment everything broke. We were at the family gift exchange, lights twinkling, the tree buried in shiny paper, and me, sitting there holding an envelope that I thought might actually help. Inside was 3 months of Jake's rent, fully covered. I slid it across the table to him, proud for half a second that maybe, just maybe, he'd see it as an olive branch. He opened it, glanced inside, and without missing a beat said, "Guess he's just trying to make up for not really being needed in this family." And just like that, the entire room erupted. My dad clapped his hands like it was the punchline to the world's funniest joke. My mom covered her mouth, giggling like a schoolgirl. Aunt Sharon was wheezing, actually wheezing, like she couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. Somebody muttered, "Savage," under their breath like we were all at some roast instead of Christmas dinner. I didn't laugh. I just reached over, slid the envelope right back out of his hand, and tucked it into my jacket. "Useful to know," I said quietly. Just 3 words. But the laughter cracked in half like glass shattering on the floor. 10 minutes earlier, I'd handed him another envelope, this one stuffed with $2,400 in neat stacks of $100 bills, clipped and crisp. Enough for 3 months' rent. No card. No note. Just money. A gift with no strings. And he tore it open like it was a grocery store flyer, already bored, already assuming it was mine. He pulled out the stacks, eyebrows raised, then said that same line again, louder this time, like he was auditioning for an audience, tries to compensate for not being needed. That time, they howled. Real laughter. Ugly, sharp, mean. And me? I just stood there with an empty coffee mug, staring into it like maybe the bottom would explain why I kept showing up for these people. No one said thank you. Not even a half-hearted, "Hey, this helps." Jake didn't even acknowledge that it was rent money. To him, it may as well have been Monopoly cash falling out of the sky. He's 23, no job, no resume, sleeps until noon, games until dawn, and my parents call him a late bloomer. I call him what he really is, a professional dependent. So I pulled the envelope from his hand and pocketed it. That was it. No shouting, no scene. Just useful to know. The room went dead silent. Forks hovered in midair. Plates froze. It was like someone had hit mute on the entire night. Mom broke first. "Oliver, don't do this. It was just a joke." Dad followed. "Come on, he didn't mean it. Sit down, eat something." Then the chorus began. "Don't ruin Christmas. You're overreacting. You know how your brother is." Yeah, I do. That's the problem. Because what they didn't know, what none of them ever bothered to notice, was that I was already standing on the edge. I'd been carrying them for months. Rent, groceries, utilities, Dad's bad back, Mom's career break. Every excuse ended with me transferring money just to keep them afloat. And never once did anyone ask if I was okay. They just assumed I'd keep paying, keep fixing, keep being the reliable one. And while Amanda was in Vermont with her family, probably curled up by the fire drinking hot cocoa, I was here, being laughed at for caring too much. So I told them. Calm, steady, plain as day. This was the last month I was covering their bills. Starting next month, Jake would have to figure out rent on his own. I wasn't the family's personal ATM anymore. That's when the shouting really began. "You're being dramatic. You'll regret this. It was just a joke." Every voice came at me at once, demanding I sit back down, laugh it off, swallow the humiliation like always. But I didn't yell back. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just slipped on my jacket, opened the door, and walked out. No slam. No parting words. Just the cold December air rushing in behind me, quiet and sharp. And here's the thing, walking out of that Christmas exchange? That was supposed to be the hard part. But the truth is, it was the easiest thing I've done in years. The fallout didn't wait long, it came crashing in the very next morning. My phone lit up with missed calls, long paragraphs, and guilt-dripping voice notes. My mom, of course, went straight into performance mode. Her first line? "You embarrassed your brother on Christmas. This family's been through so much. You've always been the one we could count on." Notice what she skipped? Any mention of the envelope. Any mention of Jake humiliating me in front of everyone. No acknowledgement at all. She just leapt straight into painting me as the problem for daring to react. So I ignored it. Left it all sitting there, unread. By the second day, her tone shifted. More direct. "Your dad's trying to talk to you like a man. Don't shut him out." Fine, I thought. If they want to talk, I'll let them. I wasn't expecting some grand apology, but maybe at least a conversation that wasn't staged. I showed up for dinner, and of course Jake was exactly who I knew he'd be, hood up, eyes glued to his phone, not even a grunt of acknowledgement. Mom floated around like she was hosting Thanksgiving, cheerful voice, fake smile, acting as if this was anything other than a damage control dinner. Dad tried small talk about the stock market, which nearly made me laugh out loud, considering I'd been paying their electric bill for 3 straight months. After dinner, the act slipped. Dad finally leaned back, got serious, and started on about perspective. How money complicates relationships. How he was sorry if things got out of hand. For a second, I thought maybe, he was working his way to an actual apology. Nope, it wasn't an apology. It was a pitch. "If you could just help us through February, we'll have it sorted. I've got a lead on a job. Jake's thinking about taking a course. It's just bad timing, that's all." And that was when it hit me. They didn't get it. Not even close. I told them this wasn't about one envelope. It wasn't about Christmas. I laid it out. I'd been covering their bills, fixing their car, bailing out Jake's overdrafts, for 2 years. 2 years of being their safety net. And what did I get in return? Mockery. Dismissal. Laughter at my expense for doing what they couldn't even manage themselves. That's when Jake finally lifted his head and muttered, "Nobody asked you to." I laughed once, sharp and bitter, because of course that's what he'd say. Then I stood up, looked at all of them, and said, "You've got 30 days to figure out how to function like adults." Mom burst into tears. Dad called me dramatic. Jake just shrugged and sank back into his phone like the conversation was a podcast he'd already tuned out of. I set my key on the hallway table, didn't say goodbye, and walked out. The following week, I got a text from Mom, "Rent is due in 5 days. Please send what you can." I Venmo'd them one last time. $1. Caption, "More than I can afford." That was it. The last dollar I ever sent their way. The first few days were eerily quiet. No calls, no begging. I think they were waiting me out, expecting me to fold like I always had, to crawl back with a check in one hand and an apology in the other. But I didn't. This time, I was done. What my family didn't know, what I hadn't told them, was that Amanda and I had quietly moved in together back in November. No big announcement, no dramatic reveal. Just two people who loved being around each other deciding it made sense to share a space. Her family barely knew me beyond a few polite hellos at birthdays and barbecues. To them, I was just Amanda's quiet boyfriend who smiled, nodded, and blended into the background. That all shifted after Christmas. Out of nowhere, Amanda's dad called me one afternoon and asked if I could come by to help him put up some shelving in the garage. I said yes, partly because I had nothing better to do, but also because, well, I liked the guy. We spent a couple hours out there in the cold, drilling, measuring, talking about tools and old cars. Nothing deep, nothing emotional, just two men working side by side. When we finished, he casually asked, "You want to stay for dinner?" I shrugged and said sure. That one dinner turned into 3. Then a weekend visit. Then a spur-of-the-moment invite to Amanda's cousin's New Year's brunch. And here's the strange part, for the first time in years, I was treated like a person. Not a walking ATM. Not the responsible one who could be leaned on for bills, rent, groceries, whatever. Just Oliver. They asked me about my job, my hobbies, what music I liked. Amanda's mom asked once if I liked banana bread, and when I said yes, she baked a fresh loaf the very next day. Who does that? It felt so normal, so simple, and yet, compared to the family I came from, it was like stepping into another world. Honestly, it hit me, I'd been a guest in my own life until then. On New Year's Eve, I was curled up by Amanda's parents' fireplace, sipping cheap wine, laughing about bad first dates with her cousins, when my phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Not a hello. Not a, "How are you?" Just, "Can you spot me $400 for a new TV? Ours is busted." No apology. No acknowledgement of Christmas. Just entitlement, like nothing had changed. I stared at it for a second, then sent back $1. Caption, "Should be plenty." No reply. That was the last message I ever got from him. From any of them, really. By mid-January, I noticed something unusual. Silence. No calls. No texts. No begging for money at random hours. At first, it was almost unsettling. I'd grown so used to being drained that the quiet felt unnatural, like the stillness before a storm. And then, one freezing night around 8 p.m., I heard a knock. I opened the door, and there was my dad. No text. No call ahead. Just standing there in a thin windbreaker, like it was still normal for him to show up unannounced. He didn't wait for an invite, he stepped right past me into the apartment like he owned it. Like we were back in the days when I lived under his roof, instead of me bailing him out of his mortgage every other month. Thank God Amanda wasn't home. She was out with her sister, and I wasn't ready for her to see this side of my life firsthand. He didn't even sit down. Just stood in the middle of the room, rubbing his hands, eyes darting around, and finally said, "I need to talk to you about something serious." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and waited. And then he laid it out. They were 2 months behind on the house. The mortgage company had been calling nonstop. That morning, a final notice had been taped to their front door. He looked me dead in the eye and said they needed $8,000 to get current, to stop foreclosure. I didn't answer him right away. I just stood there in my own living room, arms crossed, letting his words hang in the air. He started piling on excuses like he was building a wall he could hide behind. He said he'd been looking for work. That his disability case was still tied up in paperwork. That Jake was going through something, but had plans to get his act together. And I just asked one question, "Where's Jake right now?" My dad's eyes dropped to the floor. In his room, playing something, of course. Of course. Then he went for the guilt card. "Look, I know we haven't always shown it, but we do appreciate what you've done. This isn't easy to ask, but if we lose the house, your mom, it'll break her." I looked him straight in the eye and told him the truth. I was sorry, I really was. But I wasn't loaning them anything. Not $8,000. Not $800. Not 8. Nothing. The look on his face, it was like I'd just spoken a foreign language. He stared at me like this was some kind of test, and I was proudly handing in the wrong answer. "So that's it? You're just going to let your family drown?" he asked. And I told him, I didn't let anyone drown. I was the one keeping you all afloat while you refused to swim. I'm done being the life raft. That shut him up. For a moment, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Then he said the thing that finally sealed it, "I should have known. You'd turn your back when things got hard." I walked over, opened the door, and told him he needed to leave. No yelling. No dramatic gestures. Just the end of a very long, very broken script. He didn't fight it. Didn't even argue. He just walked out into the cold without another word. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a group message from my mom. One of those please texts she sent out whenever the family needed a bailout. Hi family. We're in a bit of a crisis and trying to raise funds to save the house. Anything at all helps. Thank you and God bless. I read it 3 times, waiting for even a shred of accountability. Something like, we made mistakes. We need to do better. But no. Just another vague sob story, carefully scrubbed of responsibility. A few aunts chimed in, we can help with $100. Let us know what you need. Sending prayers. I stayed silent. 3 days later, Jake finally texted me. Hey, things are bad. I'm selling my PC and trying to scrape together what I can. Can you help cover the rest? You'll get it back, I swear. No greeting. No apology. Just the same old routine. I wrote back one word, no. He shot back instantly, so you're seriously just going to let us lose the house? Wow. I didn't reply. Because what else was left to say? Every word I'd ever given them had been twisted into guilt, into obligation. Silence was the only answer that wouldn't get weaponized. That weekend, Amanda and I went to her cousin's birthday dinner. Her family had started inviting me to everything, little get-togethers, brunches, even random errands. Her dad asked if I'd help him build a new workbench in the garage. Her mom pulled me aside before dinner, squeezed my hand, and said, you're good for her. I hope you know we're happy to have you around. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The words hit harder than I expected, maybe because I couldn't remember the last time anyone said something like that to me without an ulterior motive. Later that night, I checked my phone one last time. A message from my mom. Just a link. A GoFundMe page with a picture of our old house plastered across the top and a goal of $8,000. The description read, unexpected hardship. Please help us keep our home. Any amount helps. No mention of Jake. No mention of years of mismanagement. No mention of me. I clicked donate, typed in $1, and hit send. Anonymous. No note. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. February slid by without so much as a whisper from them. No texts. No calls. Not even a guilt-laced email. The GoFundMe they'd launched sputtered out at a pitiful $740. I checked it a couple of times, not out of worry, but out of pure curiosity. The comments were familiar, my mom's old coworker, a neighbor from the street I grew up on, people offering thoughts and prayers, little notes like, hope your family pulls through this. But you know what stood out? Not a single person mentioned Jake. Not one. Nobody asked why the golden child wasn't helping. Why their grown, able-bodied son, still living at home rent-free, wasn't selling his designer sneakers, his overpriced gaming chair, or maybe, just maybe, putting down the controller long enough to contribute. The house didn't hit foreclosure that month, which told me somebody else must have stepped in. Maybe an uncle, maybe one of my aunts. I didn't care enough to find out. I told myself I'd moved on. And for the most part, I had. But every now and then, little echoes crept back in. Like the day Amanda and I were at her brother's place helping paint the nursery. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Saw you with Amanda's family? Real cozy over there. Forgot about us already? I stared at it for a long minute. Then deleted it. No reply. Not worth the energy. Meanwhile, Amanda's family kept drawing me closer, but they did it in a way that felt natural, effortless. Her dad would invite me over to help fix a leaky faucet, then hand me a beer afterward and chat about sports. Her mom started asking me to bring dishes to family potlucks, like I'd always been part of the circle. Her younger cousin asked if I'd teach him how to drive stick once summer rolled around. It wasn't loud or showy. It was steady, warm, real. And the biggest difference? They never asked me for money. They never turned me into a punchline. They just included me. One Sunday, Amanda's dad called me up himself. Said they were having a cookout and asked if I'd help man the grill. I showed up, and without hesitation, he handed me the tongs like it was some quiet passing of the torch. He didn't even ask if I knew what I was doing, he just trusted I'd figure it out. Halfway through the afternoon, Amanda leaned over, studying me with that soft look of hers, and whispered, "You okay?" And for the first time in years, I didn't have to force the answer. "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. It felt almost surreal, standing there flipping burgers, laughing with people who knew nothing about the version of me that used to spend hours driving back and forth to bail my family out of one mess after another. These people didn't see me as broken. They didn't see me as a wallet. They just saw me. A few days later, I got one final message from my mom. One last attempt. "Can you help us get a new TV? Just a small one. Ours finally died. Jake's been really down lately. $400 would be enough." I stared at the screen for a while, then typed my response. I sent $1. Caption, "Tell Jake to pick up a book." That was it. That was the last message. No thanks. No reply. Just silence. And for once, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. It felt earned. By March, the silence had hardened into something almost tangible. Not a standoff, not some dramatic Cold War, just resignation. On both sides. No more guilt-drenched voicemails from Mom. No more snide texts from Jake. No concerned numbers popping up on my phone. Nothing. I thought it would feel lonely. Instead, it felt like breathing clean air for the first time. Life with Amanda settled into a rhythm that was shockingly normal. Not movie scene romantic, not fireworks every day. Just real. She'd scribbled dumb grocery lists with little doodles in the margins, like a cow next to buy milk. I'd catch myself looking forward to Saturday trips to the farmer's market, half because I liked the fresh fruit, half because I loved debating with her over which apples were the best. It wasn't love bombing. It wasn't chaos. It was steady, and it was ours. The shift really hit me through her family. One Sunday, Amanda's mom asked if I could come early to help set up chairs for a cousin's baby shower. I figured I'd be hauling furniture for 10 minutes, then blending into the background. Instead, she handed me a list of errands like I'd been officially drafted into the family's logistics team. And the wild part? I didn't even hesitate. I just did it. Later that evening, after the party wound down and we were pulling down decorations, I caught Amanda's dad watching me. For a second, old instincts kicked in. I thought maybe he was sizing me up, waiting for me to slip. But when everyone was gone, he walked over and said, "You know, you handle yourself well. I've seen a lot of people fold under way less." That was it. No elaboration. No probing. Just a statement dropped into the air like a weight. I didn't know if Amanda had told him pieces of my past, or if he was just intuitive. Either way, it stuck with me. That night, I found myself scrolling through old texts from my family. Not responding, not engaging, just reading. Trying to remember what it felt like to be needed only when everything collapsed. After a while, I deleted the thread. It was like deleting the last ghost of who I used to be. Then came the curveball. Amanda and I were out getting tacos when she casually said, "Oh, by the way, Julia invited us to the lake house next month." I raised an eyebrow. The same Julia who couldn't remember my name the first 4 times we met? Amanda laughed. "Yeah, but now you're Oliver who fixed the grill. Apparently that gets you upgraded." I thought it was going to be harmless, just a weekend away. Instead, Julia's husband, Brian, pulled me aside Friday night with a beer in his hand and said he wanted to talk business. Turns out, he worked at a small firm that needed a project manager with IT experience. He didn't know much about me, just that Amanda had said I was dependable, organized, and not, in his words, a jackass. We talked for an hour. He admitted, "You're not even on LinkedIn, which is weird. But people remember how you make them feel. That counts more." By the end of the weekend, he'd floated me a tentative offer. Less travel. More flexibility. Better pay. Sunday morning, Amanda found me sitting on the dock, staring at the still water like it might give me answers. She asked softly, "You okay?" I nodded, still processing, because the truth was, it didn't feel real. It felt like theft. Like I was sneaking pieces of a life that wasn't supposed to belong to me. A family that welcomed me without strings. A job that landed in my lap over grilled burgers and casual conversation. Peace that I hadn't earned, not in the ways I used to measure worth. When I finally told her about the offer, she just smiled, leaned against me, and said, "Told you they'd like you." The next week, my phone lit up with something I hadn't seen in months, my mom's name. 1 missed call. No voicemail. I let it sit. Then another call came, followed by a text, "Can we talk?" Nothing bad. Just talk. For a split second, that old reflex stirred, the twitch that told me to smooth things over, make it easier for everyone else. But I didn't call back. I forwarded the text to Amanda. She replied almost immediately, "Your life's quieter now. Keep it that way." And she was right. The more distance I put between myself and my family, the clearer everything became. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because something in their world wasn't working without me. I wasn't a son or a brother to them, I was a function, a fallback plan, a wallet with legs. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running away from something, I felt like I had finally arrived somewhere. April came with a peace so steady, it felt suspicious at first. I kept waiting for the next crisis, the next desperate pitch, the next way they'd try to rope me back in. But the phone stayed silent. My inbox stayed empty. And the weight I'd carried for years, financially, emotionally, was just gone. I accepted the job Brian had offered at the lake house. One morning he texted me a start date and a link to some onboarding forms, as casually as if he'd invited me to grab lunch. I signed everything that same day. Higher pay, more flexibility, less stress. And best of all, nobody treating me like a machine whose only purpose was solving their messes. Amanda's family found out, of course, not from me, since I've never been the type to brag about wins, but from Amanda telling her mom, who told her dad, who told everyone else. Her dad invited us over for dinner. He grilled ribs and even opened a bottle of wine he usually saved for Christmas. Halfway through the meal, he raised his glass and said, "To Oliver, for knowing when to stay in a fight, and when to walk away." Everyone toasted. I said thank you. And that was it. No jabs. No reminders of past failures. Just people happy for me. That same night, when we got home, I saw another missed call from my mom. 9:46 p.m. No message, just a number I knew by heart staring back at me like a question I didn't want to answer. A few days later, a voicemail, "Your cousin said you got a new job. I'm glad to hear that. I hope you're happy. We're still here if you want to come back." Come back. As if I'd just gone on vacation. As if Christmas hadn't happened. As if years of being treated like a disposable safety net could be reset with one vague message that didn't even include the word sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't even save it. May rolled in with the final hit. A text from Jake. A screenshot of a flat-screen TV on sale at Best Buy. Price tag, $399. His message, "You could help, $400 isn't a lot to someone like you." No greeting. No context. Not even a fake attempt at brotherly concern. And for the first time, I didn't get angry. I didn't sigh. I didn't feel anything at all. I sent him $1. Caption, "Still too much." He never replied. That was the last time I ever heard from him. That same weekend, Amanda and I escaped to the lake house, just us. No family. No obligations. No emergencies. She brought books, I brought charcoal and meat. We grilled, we swam, we played cards, and we talked about nothing until the sun dropped behind the trees. It felt like living inside a life I never thought I'd be allowed to have. Saturday night, wrapped in a blanket by the fire, her hair still damp from the lake, Amanda looked at me and asked, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it longer than I expected. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I understood what she was really asking. "I miss who I hoped they'd be," I said finally. "But that version of them never existed. I think I was just too close to see it." She nodded once. "Good." After she went to bed, I stayed outside by the fire, staring at the flames. I opened my phone, scrolled through every old message thread one last time, and hit delete. Every number. Every saved contact. Gone. Not because I hated them. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I didn't want the temptation. I didn't want the wait. There's a line you cross when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your choices in the hope that someone will finally understand. I wasn't explaining anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I wasn't hoping they'd change. I had changed. And that was enough. When I finally slipped into bed, Amanda stirred, half asleep. "Everything okay?" she murmured. I kissed her forehead. "Yeah," I whispered. "Everything's finally okay." Update. I wasn't planning to add anything else. Honestly, I thought the story ended clean: new job, Amanda, her family practically adopting me, my old life fading into the rearview mirror. But then last week, something small happened that hit me harder than I expected. Amanda and I were at her parents' house for a casual Sunday lunch. Just sandwiches and lemonade in the backyard. Her mom disappeared inside, then came back holding a small cardboard box, the kind jewelry comes in, only a little bigger. She handed it to me and said, "It's nothing big. Just something we found while cleaning the attic." I opened it. Inside was an old Polaroid photo, me and Amanda at our very first Thanksgiving with her family. I was mid-bite, holding a paper plate stacked with food, looking confused and half laughing. Amanda was beside me, pointing at something off-frame, laughing so hard her eyes were squeezed shut. I barely even remembered the photo being taken. Her mom smiled and said, "We kept it because that's the day we realized you fit in." It hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Not because of the picture itself, but because someone had noticed that moment, had remembered it, cherished it, given it meaning I didn't know it carried. I kept the little box. It's sitting on the shelf in our living room now, next to a plant Amanda swears isn't dying. And it reminded me, sometimes the biggest surprise isn't some grand gesture or dramatic event. Sometimes it's just someone showing you, quietly, that you were seen. That you mattered. Without asking for anything in return.